Hello and welcome to Putting Nutrition First in Zambia with me, Josie Perry. On this edition, special guidance on producing different foods to vary our diets. Retired but not tired, we meet Musa Sianga, a retiree whose after-employment preoccupation is adding value to food and to the lives of people in Kalumwange. What's cooking today? A typical dish from Kwabulozi, cassava leaves in Muzauli, and of course, 4 easy-to-remember nutrition facts on our Did You Know segment. I'll be back in a moment. It's a rainy season in Zambia now. With it comes farming. Big farmers, small farmers, family, and even some individuals are busy working the land to produce food in order to stock up or sell. Naturally, the National Food and Nutrition Commission is taking keen interest in the types of foods being grown and how this could affect Zambia's nutrition status. And so today, Acting Executive Director Musonda Mofu talks about diverse food production in the context of increased dietary diversity. Welcome to Putting Nutrition First in Zambia.
Thank you very much, Josie.
Just to raise the curtain, when we talk about dietary diversification, what are we on about?
Josie, there are a lot of foods that we have, and dietary diversification implies that the menu in the household or the foods that we eat, we start broadening the scope. By this I mean that we start including a variety of foods from different food groups that are consumed in the home, in the community, and in the nation. So simply put, dietary diversification is a process where we encourage the communities, the country, to eat a variety of foods from different food groups that exist in the country.
Now, when we look at the country and these different foods that you're talking about, how available are they on a wide scale?
Zambia is rich in terms of foods. We have over 250 different types of foods. But these foods are classified, have been grouped into 13 different food groups. Now, these foods are available across the country. We have 3 agroecological zones. In the north, there are different types of food. Some of them are similar to those in the middle and also in the south and the west. But overall, you see that there are different types of foods and they are available at different times of the year. So these foods are available, but not throughout the year, but at different points of the year, from season to seasons. And so when you tie it to the questions that you raised, basically we are saying that when we diversify the diet, we are simply saying that at at different seasons of the year, these foods, different foods that are available, should be consumed in the households. This is very important because when you look at the way there are a lot of foods that are available during the rain season. But once the rain season is over, you will not see these foods. And we are saying data diversification, we want to ensure that all the foods that are available during the rain season, for example, should be consumed during this period and even beyond. And there are different methods that we can use to ensure that these foods are available throughout the year. So there are different processing methods that we can actually use.
I would like you to give us a national picture here. When we look at the foods that are available and how we're consuming them as a nation, what is the picture? How are we doing?
I think when you pose that question, I really feel sad that despite having quite a lot of food in the country, different types, but the diversity is very poor. We have a limited base for food. For example, at the moment, the dietary diversity score is around 5. What this means is that from the total potential groups of 13, Zambians are only eating from 5 groups, and that is not good enough, because it means that we are excluding the other food groups. So those food groups are not being included in the diet, and unfortunately we have kind of a monotonous kind of diet where only limited food groups are being consumed in the country. So
would you nail that down to, say, maybe traditional preferences or costs of the food?
There are different drivers to diet diversification. One is that of the costs. You will see that traditional foods, generally speaking, are expensive in our country, and we really need to resolve that. The diversity that we can benefit from in the country comes from traditional foods, but these are the foods that are expensive. And if you go on the market, you'll see that exotic foods like cabbage, rape, Chinese cabbage, those are cheaper than if you were to ask for example, beans leaves or chimpapila or kachesha or cowpea leaves. So you'll see that just from the vegetable point alone, the pricing, something has gone wrong, and we really need to resolve that. So the cost of these foods, especially traditional foods, is a barrier in itself. Secondly, I think we need to look at the cultural aspects, where we are moving into the westernized diets, and the foods that we are embracing are actually Western foods, and yet they may be limited on the market, and children are growing up knowing only those foods. So the way we are raising generations is also another determinant. We are not introducing traditional foods that are rich in nutrients to the new generation. So there are quite a lot of drivers and determinants to the situation that we have, and these we have to address. So the price, yes, is an important thing, but also the way we are embracing different cultures that deal with food. So the food culture that we are embracing is somehow kind of affecting how the traditional foods and other foods that are rich in nutrients are being adopted.
So as the organization that is charged with nutrition, food and nutrition matters in this country, what are you doing in order to make this shift in mindset?
So firstly, as the National Food and Nutrition Commission, our main focus has been, first of all, to do nutrient analysis for different types of foods, so that when we determine the nutrient composition, we should be able to compare, and then we share this information so that the population can actually see that actually the foods that are being looked down on are actually even richer in terms of nutrients. So we have done an analysis on the nutrient composition of different foods, especially traditional foods, and that information is available, and you will see that these traditional foods and the locally available foods are actually rich in nutrients. That's point number one. From there, then we have developed some behavior change communication strategy, and we are now we've now embarked upon a national program to disseminate this information so that the population can know. We are focusing especially on the different recipes that we produce, to show the traditional recipes that we have and how rich our culture is. So that is one area that we have worked on. Thirdly, we are conducting the National Food Consumption Survey so that we actually understand what Zambians are eating in all regions of the country. Based on that information, then we can carefully and correctly, promote the different types of food based on the regions as well as on the different seasons of our country.
Thank you very much. Just to wrap up very quickly, what I would like to ask you is this. Without farmers, there is no food. So what word do you have for all food growers so that they can at least carry this into practicality?
You need to know that without diverse food production, you cannot attain dietary diversity, because the diversity basically comes from food production. And so farmers, regardless of whether they are small farmers, commercial farmers, they are the most important stakeholder in ensuring that we achieve dietary diversification. So the National Food and Nutrition Commission, echoing what government has directed to diversify agriculture production, we are calling upon all the small-scale farmers, all the commercial farmers to diversify their production by including legumes, different vegetables, different protein foods, small livestock in their production. This is what will set, the basis for the dietary diversification. And we have instructed our provincial and district coordinators to ensure that this message is disseminated in the different districts, in the different provinces, so that come 2020, we are not going to talk about limited diversity, both in terms of production as well as dietary intake. So we are calling upon the country to diversify the production, to diversify the dietary intake. We are also calling upon the different parents to actually, when they go to the market, to buy a variety of food so that different foods can be introduced in the homes. So the farmers, really, we are depending on them in order to encourage diverse production and diverse dietary intake.
And what an interesting note to end this interview on. Thank you very much for coming to the studio, and we hope that we'll have you back sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Josie.
When she retired from her job at Mulungushi University, Musa Sianga settled in Kalumwange. Now, that is in Kaoma, in case you didn't know. Musa thought she'd lead a quiet life on a small farm, but life threw a few surprises at her. Let's find out what.
Okay, my name is Musa Sianga. I am based in Kalumwange of Kaoma. I'm a farmer there, and I'm also a civic leader there. I'm the councillor for the area, Kalumwange ward. So basically, main thing that I'm there for is farming. Predominantly, people there initially used to be hunters, but eventually with time, the farming aspect came in, and they are now predominantly farmers, though not at a very high level, but at household level, well, they're trying. Before I became a farmer, I was working from Mulungushi University in Kabwe under the Dean of Students office. I was an administrator and looked after students from the time they come into the university up to the time they exit. I retired in 2012 and relocated here to see how I can settle myself. Eventually got into Kalumwange, and I'm happy there. I'm a farmer. I found that it is beneficial to my family and the rest of the community if we grew a lot of foodstuffs. Being a rural community, you find that most households don't really grow enough because of the hardships, the constraints that they face, as in financial, they have to get the fertilizers and they have no money. So we were encouraged, especially by the conservation farming unit, to grow a lot of soybeans, a lot of maize, a lot of groundnuts, sweet potatoes, and foodstuffs like those. So eventually, when I got interested in the soybeans, I found that there were more benefits in soybeans actually than in maize itself, as if you grow it on its own. But if you had a multi type of cultivation, then you'll have a lot of foodstuffs at once, and these were beneficial. So that's how I got interested into processing soya eventually, because I found that the ingredients that I'll use were on my farm, like the maize, the soybeans, the cowpeas, the groundnuts, and salt and sugar, which I can get from the shops, and which is not even a lot of it. And that made my herbs. I found that it was good both for my financial income in my home and for the nutrition of other people. Actually, at times I just go out into the community, now that I'm a councillor there, just give out to families, those who need to know how to process the soya or how to get more value out of their products. Though I might not have the figures as of now, but I would say we have reached out to quite a number of people in the local community in Kalumwange and in Kaoma, because each time I'm passing through, a lot of people ask me, where's the soya, where's the soya, you know. So I find that at least we've made some strides. We only maybe need a little bit more of marketing of the same product so that a lot of people know about it. And once they know about it, I'm sure the status quo will change, nutrition levels will improve, and then financially one will get something out of their product, and will even be answering to this call of adding value to the products that we grow on our farms. It's not just about growing the products and selling them whole, but if you add the value, even the price goes up. Because out of 10 kg of soya added with 20 kg of maize and 4 kg of cowpeas, then 5 kg of groundnuts, I get something like 600, which ordinarily I wouldn't get if I just sold those as in the products they are. Well, I didn't receive formal training. I got this information online. I would browse on the internet, and that's how I got even the ingredients. And eventually, after processing for a few times, I would learn how to add more value now to it. Because at first, I just would do soya and maize. Eventually, we started adding cowpeas as an ingredient. And later on, we added groundnuts. And we found out that the taste was even more enhanced, was better. And at one time, before we added the groundnuts, we would add a bit of milk, powdered milk. And the taste would be much, much better. So for people who don't like milk, they would add groundnuts. For those who don't want groundnuts, would add a bit of milk. Well, the volumes are not really much to talk about because this is like a cottage industry just done at home, at household level. But I'm sure with more exposure, one would have the potential to do quite a lot actually, and maybe even improve on packaging. Yes, as a civic leader, my challenge or my biggest job has been to encourage the locals to adapt to these new interventions that are coming, especially conservation farming. If you make a comparison on one who does not use conservation farming and they don't have fertilizer, they'll have nothing at the end of the day. But those who use conservation farming, because they'll do their basins early and plant early, and then the first rains will find they'll plant with the first rains. Eventually they will even get some yield, even if they don't apply fertilizer, because the soils and the rain pattern in Kalumwange is so good. But the locals have actually been motivated because when they come to my place, they find I'm in the field. So when they go back to their places, they also go into the field because they naturally they will think, as a civic leader, a retiree, you are at a higher level than them. But if they see you doing what they do, they get encouraged. So that's how far we've gone. I look forward to a time when Kalumwange will be much, much better than it is if we can have industries in there, because there's a lot of crop production. But all the products, all the crops are taken or bought at very low prices by people who just come to buy, and they go and enhance these products and get a lot of money out of it.
Chwaniko Kwabulozi. That's right, our recipe comes from Western Province and it's cassava cooked with muzauli. Akimunati wo yummy. And that wraps up our show for today. Many thanks to the production team, and I hope to see you soon. I'm Josie Piri saying bye now.
Nutrition is the heart of a nation.